Go ahead and get started this evening. Diane, why don't you let us know what public officials are in attendance this evening?
Yes, sir. Mayor Jamie Slutes. Here. Safety Service Director Renee Baker. Here. Assistant Law Director Edmund Mack. Director of Development Ted Hernkane. Here. Income Tax Budget Director Lori Katagides-Boron. Here. Street Superintendent Tom Bergasser. Is there anyone from administration I missed? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Alex. Alex Pitts, city engineer.
Here. All right.
Now, is there anyone I've missed? That's it, President Pro Tem.
Why, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rowland. And let the record show that all members of council are present, with the exception of Mr. Mark Lombardi and our President Slater are not in attendance. Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have no new business, and I have two ordinances that will be up for third reading on Monday. Ordinance number 60-2024, the amended, and also ordinance number 61-2024. That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions regarding the adult use cannabis control, chapter 778 in our ordinances? Yes.
I don't know how anybody, oh, thank you, Mrs. Kramer, how anybody feels about this, but we know if we open up these cannabis shops, they are going to be lining up. But last week in the Massillon Independent, I don't know if it was in the repository or not, there was a sheet from a company out of Michigan, and they had all kinds of discount coupons. Buy 1 gram, you get 2.5. Buy such and such amount, you get $10 off. I mean, they're going to be there to buy this anyway. Really, they got to give us coupons? Or not us, but the people? I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Bryan.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. To Mrs. Cunningham's comment, the coupons were for a Michigan-based shop?
True, but
Thank you.
I guess just food for thought, guys. I mean, okay.
Ms. Hardwick-Smith.
I think when it comes to a lot of situations, I mean, we're trying to do best what our voters want. We don't always know what our voters want. In the case of the cannabis, the state has voted, citizens of Massillon voted in the election. We were given the results, and the city as a whole has voted that they do approve recreational marijuana. So for us to not do what the voters want, I think is wrong, whether you agree personally or not personally with it. It's been approved, there's regulations, there's serious regulation on it. And that's just what I want to say about it.
Any additional comments or questions? Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. Councilwoman Cunningham, when you said they're going to be lining up, who are you referring to?
The folks that want to buy the marijuana, and they will be. Today I had someone suggest to me that one of the locations is not going to hold enough parking spaces for the people. They're going to be there to buy it. I don't know, but that was a comment that was given to me today.
From a business perspective, it sounds like a good problem to have. And I think that's what we want, right? Because if we do end up passing this, a lot of it will be because of the economic benefit to the city. So we want them to have customers.
But Mr. Gregg, one of the detriments is the fact that people are not going to be responsible enough, just because they're not, to drive when they're high. And as of right now, there is no way to test for marijuana's highness, not like we have for alcohol DUIs. We have to keep that in mind as well.
I see your point, but we do have laws, to deal with those situations. So I guess that's my comment. Yeah, you can have all kind of hypotheticals and what ifs, right? But I think in general we ought to keep in mind, as we said, voters seem to have approved it, at least in the state of Ohio. it's something we should keep in mind. Thank you.
But Mr. Gregg, once, a few weeks ago, you did respond as not in our backyard.
I'm critical of that temperament. I'm not a not in my backyard person because one of those spots will actually be in my
your
backyard.
right.
So no, I'm critical of the idea or the temperament that I want this to happen, but I don't want it in my backyard. I don't like that sentiment. I think if it's good enough in your backyard, it's good enough in my backyard. So I'm critical of that. I'm not supporting that statement at all. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
I'll just point out that there are multiple substances and products that can be purchased currently and have been for years. Primarily, as I've said before, alcohol. It's been legal for decades. I don't know if there's a person in the room alive when it wasn't legal. We are not able to control what people do with what they purchase and if they use it responsibly or irresponsibly. We cannot legislate morality. But with all that said, can I please call the mayor up for a second?
Sure.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, how many years were you a police officer?
25 years.
So in your 25 years of law enforcement experience, is there a way to tell if someone is under the influence of something that you might not be able to test on the spot?
So there are 3 tests that when somebody gets arrested for driving under the influence, whether it be alcohol or drug related, to test alcohol, you go take a breath test, which we all understand that. But if the police department suspects somebody high on some type of drug, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, they would take the individual that was arrested to the hospital, draw blood, or have a urine test. So there are 2 other additional tests besides blowing into a machine to test for drugs in particular.
So in your opinion, are you confident that our law enforcement here in town are equipped and trained to be able to properly identify and manage any potential side effects that may occur?
In my experience, being a police officer for 25 years, it's something that every police department in the nation deals with on a daily basis. So I feel very confident in the men and women of our police department that they will be able to handle any situation when it comes to people operating their vehicles under the influence of whether it be alcohol or drugs.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. I believe I had a conversation with someone. I was suggesting a possible like a 6-month moratorium to see how other communities are dealing with this and how it's kind of rolling along. And I don't remember the exact comment, but it was like, even if we don't allow it for 6 months, that they can come in without any legislation from the city. Is that correct?
So what we're voting on when this comes to a head is allowing these dispensaries to be in the city of Massillon. So, and I think Mr. Hernkane touched on that. So what you guys want to do is limit it to 2 dispensaries in the city. So if we had that on record and we had legislation stating that we could only have 2 on record, that's, you made the choice to limit it to 2. If this does not pass and we don't have something on record limiting the number to 2 and say you vote no on this, then there's nothing stating that we can't have 3 or 4. There's nothing in the ordinances stating we can't have as many as we want. We could have 5 as long as it's in the 500-foot radius away from churches or schools or whatever the other things are that they can't be by. So, and the distance between them was 1.5 miles, a mile. So, yeah, if you don't pass this stating that we're limiting it to 2, then we're opening the door for 3 or 4 down the road.
Could we please bring Mr. Hernkane up?
Are we done with Mayor Slutes?
I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Or I mean, yes. That's,
Mr. Hearn Kane?
Jamie, that's not what I meant. Yeah. Alrighty then.
Good evening, Mrs. Kramer, Mrs. Cunningham.
Mr. Hernkane, I phoned you last week concerning, because someone had brought it to my attention that there was a church near the old Payless shoe store that was within 500 feet. Could you explain that conversation, please?
Sure. Councilwoman Cunningham called me about a church. I forget the name, but it's located at 1841 Tremont. When the medicinal marijuana law passed several years ago, the same 500-foot prohibition between the facility and a church in this instance was in effect, and they counted it from the nearest point on the parcel boundary line. So closest point to closest point, 500 feet. What they did with this law, when they wrote the recreational marijuana law, they lessened the restriction on the dispensary's end, and they count from 500 feet from the nearest point of the boundary parcel of the prohibited establishment, in this case the church, to the actual structure of the dispensary. So it doesn't go boundary line to boundary line, it goes boundary line to building. So in Mrs. Cunningham's question, yes, the parcel from the church at 1841 Tremont is within 500 feet of the parcel located at where the Payless shoe store used to be. However, in this instance, we go from the boundary line of the church to the actual structure, which is another 50 or 60 feet back, which is well within the 500-foot radius. So there's a little bit of difference there, but that's how they count it. I learned that this week, too.
Thank you, Mr. Hernkane, because I wanted to have that put on record that I did speak to you concerning it for our citizen that brought it up. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Gregg?
Thank you, Ms. Creamer. So just to clarify, you're saying it's well within the 500? So
I'm-
either way, it's within 500 or no?
It's outside the 500 because the building is set back 50 or so,
Okay.
maybe 60 feet. So it's
Yeah.
not within the 500-foot prohibition, for the record, but the parcel is, the structure is not, and that's how they count it.
So you said when the medicinal law was passed, it was counted the other way. So if this establishment wants to sell recreational, we're also got a dual use license, wanted to sell medicinal, would it be under the old?
The dual use trumps the medicinal, so the recreational takes
It
precedent
would,
in that
the
instance.
new, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Hernkane.
Thank you.
So it will be up for a vote on Monday. On Tuesday. Thank you, Diane. That's all I have for community development.
Economic development?
I have nothing for economic development today. Thanks.
Health, welfare, building?
We have one that'll be coming up for third reading. Unless there's any questions or comments tonight, it'll be up for third reading and passage. Give me a minute.
Decibels.
Decibels, the sound. Thank you, Ed.
No problem.
Yes, Mrs. Kramer?
Second reading, she
It'll
meant.
be up for second.
I'm
reading.
sorry, second reading. Mr. Gregg? Oh, okay.
I was questioning whether it was second or third reading also.
Yep, second, sorry. I just want to see if you guys are on your toes tonight.
Parks and Rec?
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Police and Fire? Oh, nothing tonight.
Nothing from Police and Fire.
Public Utilities?
Nothing, thank you, though.
Rules Courts?
Nothing from Rules and Courts this evening?
Streets and Highways?
We do have one new piece of legislation coming from Streets and Highways. It is asking to prepare an ordinance to assist private property owners in the removal of overgrown, dead, diseased, or obstructing trees located within the right-of-way or tree lawn. There is emergency language on this in order to allow residents to take advantage of the program during the current year. At this time, is there any questions or comments? Mr. Lewis.
Sounds like a great program. I like the idea of it. I'm just going to have a question if we can find out the funding source.
Sure. Can somebody from the administration address that, please? Hey, Tom.
Mr. Lewis, you asked about the funding source. So we can appropriate for next year because we intend to continue the program for this year. And the reason why it's so important is because I intend to take money from the guardrail account. We only have one guardrail project out. And because I've been fortunate to be able to make people who actually hit the guardrails pay for them, we have that money sitting in the account that is unused. And so I can't think of a better way to continue to maintain the streets as try to get some of these large trees out in a safe manner.
How much is the funding for right now?
So I'd like to try to get $30,000. I think I really need to try and restrict 5,000 or so in the guardrail, so I have 20,000 there, but I can pull 10,000, I believe, from services. We had a mild winter, and so I'm just trying to, yes. We have that levy, the street levy, and I'm trying to spend money in the most, obviously with the administration's permission, with the most consideration for the residents who are trying to get some of these large trees out.
Did I read it was up to $3,000?
Yes, that is for tree and stump removal. It does us no good to remove the tree and not remove the stump system.
And we think that's reasonable to have a tree removed?
I think $6,000 is more than reasonable because they're going to be paying for 50%.
Councilwoman Kramer?
So are we wanting to set up this program similar to the sidewalk replacement program where the program opens at a certain date, it closes a certain date, and there's criteria or first come, first serve for this program?
So as you have in front of you, the tree program does pattern itself specifically after the sidewalk program, with the exception of the application period. We didn't want to deny somebody if we had, we're going to spend the money. I think you'll find that we could spend 20 times that and still not cover all of the diseased, overgrown trees in the tree lawns. So I think this program is going to find itself well prepared, but in the event we had some funding left over, we wouldn't want to restrict it to a May 30th deadline and say, listen, I have $12,000 left, but the program's out of date. So we thought we would open it up and continue it throughout the year until we run out of money.
So in the sidewalk program, I think we've allocated $100,000 for that program, I believe. Does that sound right, Mr. Lewis? Or 125,000? 100,000 to 125. So you're giving me that look. Does that
I would have
sound
to
like too
look.
high or too low?
I was thinking it sounded high because originally we started at 25,000. First year we did it, but it has grown. But regardless, we've allocated the money.
Are we looking at that type of dollar amount? I know you said 30,000 this year because of what's left in the guardrail account, but where are we looking at for this program, to be?
So what I look for from this program, Mrs. Creamer, is number one, to be responsible enough to prove to you that I can manage the program and I can find the money to do it this year. And if that lends itself to your ability to say, we're going to give you a little bit more money next year, I'm all for that. But I feel like I owe it to you and to the residents to prove to you what it's going to do first. And I thought I would try to pattern it, as you said, after the beginning of the sidewalk program. I did ask for $5,000 more, but I think I can come up with the money.
And it's only diseased state trees. I know there was a bad storm a year or two ago and uprooted trees, very large trees in my ward, and homeowners had to pay out of pocket to get those trees removed, and they were thousands and thousands of dollars. So is it just disease state, or is it?
It is not. It is overgrown, dead, diseased, or obstructive trees. So in other words, if the tree itself is impinging on the curb, the sidewalk, or the roadway, in particular a brick road, for example, and it falls short of the circumference or it's not dead, we would still take an application to remove that tree. If it is overgrown, if the circumference is above 36 inches, we're going to look to remove that tree. At one time, we were a tree city. We wanted to plant trees. The trees were this big. Now they're this big. And so that, along with that comes a lot of maintenance. Our catch basins are in the middle of that. The residence sewer system, storm system, gutter system is all in there, plus their sidewalks and everything. It's just, you know, I feel like we should at least try to help.
And first come, first serve, based on the application date? Is that how we're going to take that approach?
Yes.
We meet all the criteria, first come, first serve, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Smee. Mr. Burgasser, will you put out to bid for each of these trees that'll be removed, or are you going to have one company that's going to do it all?
Neither. I'm going to accept 2 quotations, and I'm going to go with the lowest and the best in partnership with the resident. The resident has a stake in who they have do that, just as I have a stake in who they do that. And my interest in that is going to ensure that you're not only removing the tree, you're going to have to remove the stump. It does us no good to have a stump that's this high. It's an eyesore for the residents, you know, the other resident, and we're just not going to be about that. We want to make it so that it's aesthetically pleasing again.
I understand that if the stump is not ground out, that the roots still continue to grow and cause more damage. Is that true?
Minimally, they continue to grow, but yes, it'd be like, yes. I was going back to my fire world, and I probably ought not do that, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilman Ray?
Thank you, Councilman. My question is a little bit of a step back. Are you saying that it's going to cost $3,000 per tree
No, sir.
on average?
I'm saying that in partnership with the resident, we will spend not more than $3,000 per project, and that includes stump removal as well as tree removal. So if it's a $12,000 project and the resident or property owner comes to us and says, hey, we want to do this, well, the most that we're going to contribute is $3,000. So if you're going to put up the rest of it, that's fine. Otherwise, we're going to exclude that project.
Understandable. Thank you.
Councilwoman Harwig Smith?
Thank you, Councilman Sneed. My question is, I have a lot of homes in my ward, and this kind of happened with the sidewalk program, and I could see this happening with the tree removal where, you know, if the residents are the ones who are financially responsible and they just don't have the money, whether, you know, some of them could be rental houses, some of them could just be, I mean, but a lot of them, they're just on fixed income and they don't have extra thousands of dollars. So if we have something that's obstructing or dead and the residents don't have the money to even do half of it and be in this program, and these trees are sitting there, what can be done about it? And how do we help those residents who can't afford even half?
So I thought I would try to start somewhere, because you're right. I mean, as you go through the ordinances, clearly it's the property owner's responsibility to maintain the right-of-way and to maintain the tree lawn. They have a responsibility to do all of those things. At the same time, when a storm hits, as you said, Mrs. Creamer, now all of a sudden we're bringing people out on overtime in inclement weather, trying to take a tree off the middle of the road and deal with it that way. So from our perspective, it's probably safer for us to have folks who cut down trees every day to do that. Now, in saying all of that, I absolutely did not answer your question. The answer to your question is, I don't know how, I can't be Excel and think with the end in mind while I'm just trying to start. But I agree with you that there are problems with that, and maybe if I prove to you that $30,000 is enough for a grant at 50%, you might give me $10,000 at 100% to help someone like that. I felt like I owed you accountability first, so.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Cunningham?
Thank you, Councilman. Will you send somebody to the tree to determine if it is diseased first?
No, ma'am, I will go myself.
You yourself? All right.
And if I need help with that, I will call either Barron's or Petreco or Haymaker, because I'm a fireman, not a tree guy, but I do have, I've got a couple years of experience with that. If I question it, I'm gonna find out.
Thank you.
Councilman Ray?
I'm actually for what you're doing with the trees. When you say with, things that are in the way, would this help with trees that overhang over people's homes? Because a lot of people use the CBDG program to get new roofs, and this could also prevent them from having to go back down that way. So obviously, you just said you need us to give you an opportunity so you can show what you can do. So hopefully down the line, there can be some changes.
So, Mr. Ray, you bring up another great point. Part of what we do as the street department, as trees overhang the roadway, we're required to cut those down. At the same time, why is it the taxpayer who lives 6 miles away, why is it their responsibility to have us cut those trees down when clearly the tree management is the property owner's responsibility? And the answer is because it's safer. When you get into a problem like that, if the school bus can't pass, if you can't see, the stop sign, those are all issues. You raise another issue, which is now all of a sudden roofs need to be replaced and things like that. And people, unfortunately, can't see the forest through the trees if they're trying to make ends meet day to day.
Correct.
I get what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. Again, I think that could be a facet of this in the future. I think you have to allow me the opportunity to hold myself accountable to you for what I can do before I get involved in something like that. I could have come in here pie in the sky and had you guys say, what the heck? So,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Kramer?
I haven't put much thought, so I'm kind of thinking out loud based on what Ms. Horwick-Smith said about individuals that, do not have the money. Would this program be able to be coupled with community building partnership of Stark County? They have an exterior renovation grant program, and I was just kind of wondering if we can pull resources together, and yes, they'll still have to come up with a dollar amount. It's not going to be at no charge, but, are we able to possibly work something in order to achieve and get these trees down? Just kind of thinking outside and
Sure.
your thoughts on that.
So, Mrs. Creamer, at the risk of offending you, we're thinking alike, and maybe that's dangerous for you. But what I was sitting here thinking when Mrs. Harwick-Smith was speaking was, I wonder if there are grant programs throughout the state of Ohio or the county that would be available to assist that. I don't know the answer to that. I didn't focus on that. I was trying to focus on this piece of it, but that sparks the ability to maybe do that. I could research that.
Right, and I know that exterior renovation grants, one of my residents in my area that I spoke with that had that tree come down during that bad storm, they were able to obtain funds through that grant, but I didn't know if we had two different programs, if we would be able to couple them and kind of move forward. Just a thought.
And I apologize, I don't know either at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Gregg?
Thank you, Councilman Sneak. So in reading the legislation, I saw, I want to clarify this. This is for trees that are in tree lawns or in a right-of-way, correct? Not just on somebody's property that may be overhanging a sidewalk, let's say.
That's correct.
That's still completely up to the homeowner to take care of that.
Correct.
What would be an example of a situation with a tree in a right-of-way? Like what type?
So a tree in the tree lawn means that, as I'm understanding it, and the reason why I differentiate it is because in between the sidewalk and the curb is the tree lawn.
Right.
But if there is no sidewalk, then you really don't have a tree lawn, you have a right-of-way. Does that?
Yes, that answers my question. I was wondering that example, because in my neighborhood, there are no sidewalks. But, and my understanding is that there's a, certain foot right of way that would be there if there was a sidewalk. So,
Yes, sir.
So, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, Mr. Burgasser, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you very much,
All right.
and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much. That is all from Streets and Highway.
All right, we now have finance. Our first piece is appropriate from the general fund, general balance, 1,100. $500 for service and contracts, animal control, $4,500 for supplies, material, and postage. Would this be Ms. Baker? Animal control? Or Mayor Slutes, whichever one.
Hello.
So just the $5,000, what are we needing this for animal control?
So we're moving it so that she has their own spot for animal control. Because right now it was coming out of a different account, so we want all her supplies and stuff to be in one area specifically for animal control.
Okay.
And I believe, and I have to ask Lori, is this the donation? This is also the donation.
Okay, so this is coming. Lori, do you want to just come up too? I see what you did there.
Well, I don't want to tell you something that's wrong, but
We appreciate that.
sorry, Lori.
So basically, we got the donation, was that from the Eagles?
Yes.
And it was covering the supplies and a vehicle possibly or something of that nature?
To fit the vehicle, supplies for the vehicle, and then other supplies that she needs.
Okay.
And the cages, I believe, for that needed to be the vehicle. I call it accessorizing. It's to accessorize the back of the van for her so that she has a place to put the animals and things like that.
What is the 160?
That's Renee's.
That's Renee's?
Yes, the animal control is in the safety service director's
Yes.
fund right now, account.
And then, so then the 2394 and 2420, those are line items that you're creating that will be animal control?
Yes, we had the auditors specifically create this for animal control.
Okay. All right, I'll have to get with you on an additional question, because I remember in the past, council had to approve the creation of certain, I don't know if maybe it was line items or maybe it was bigger, the next level up. I don't
It
know.
might be the fund. We can.
But like
we
the
can-
160.
Right, the overall, like, so if we wanted to make a fund for XYZ department, then we would have to come,
To create it, but
To
the
create
line
that,
items you
but
guys
the
were
line
able to
items.
create. Okay. Anybody else have, I know that was just technical talk about it, but anybody else have any questions?
well, I will check on that, because I did get these, we did get these from the auditor, so I will check on that, Diane, so we can make a correction by next time.
So, okay, well, let me double check this. So, I know this will all get worked out, but I have you. So is it going to be a line item that specifically says animal control, or is it going to be a line item that still is under the service director's normal contracts, but then we're using it as this?
Specifically for animal control.
It will, when we look at a budget, it'll say
Animal
animal control, but it'll
control.
be under service.
But it'll be under the safety service directors.
So,
They do not have their own department.
correct. So we'll see, when we look at the budget coming up, we will see under service director, we will see animal control, and it'll be like a contracts or supplies, and it'll be what we're
Correct.
getting for them. Does the salary do the same, or does that get rolled up
That gets rolled up
under her staff?
under her staff, yes.
Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. This may not be appropriate at this point, but has she been on the road? Has she been working? And can anybody report on that?
Yeah, so her first couple weeks, she was getting set up. She still is ordering some supplies, and she's also contacted some other agencies like the Stark County Dog Warden, Humane Society. She's met with those people to establish relationships and figure out where she falls into that role in working with them. She's also been contacting other cities with animal control to learn more about their positions. We're setting up training for her. So that was her first couple weeks, and then she's also has been out driving around. She has been on some calls, actually even looking for stuff herself. A lot of folks still are not contacting her directly, so she'll see a post on Facebook where someone posts a dog's lost or found, and she'll contact them through that way and go out, and she's actually returned a couple dogs to their homes already. So she is out. It's increasingly getting more and more, but we're still in those developing stages and getting some training and things worked out and possibly some ordinance changes.
Good, thank you.
Ms. Creamer?
Yes. Just to clarify, so she has a direct number that
Yes.
residents can call.
That is correct.
And I know she works, that was Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., because I know that was a concern for off hours. So if someone calls that number during off hours, does it forward to the police department? Does it have a message saying, call the police department? How does that work, off hours, weekends? So forth?
So off hours, we're going to be doing more and more education through our Facebook page for the residents, but her number is out there. But when it's after hours, they do need to call the police department. I will double check what she has on her voicemail. That's a good idea to have that. But again, if she answered her phone after hours, literally, she'd probably just be working constantly. And so we do have to have a backup plan, which is PD. And they even on certain calls have to go out with her as well. If it's certain things where they have to be involved, they still have to go out with her. Yes.
Howard Smith?
Thank you. So I have, somewhere I wrote down the number. Are they going to add this to our massillon.ohio.gov, or how do people look up and find this number to call her?
So she should be on the website, but if she's not, I will make sure that's updated.
Okay, I was just
She
looking
should have
for it under
been.
departments. I didn't.
But I will make sure that is updated if it's not.
Yeah.
I apologize if it's not on there.
Thank you.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you. I just wanted to give you a thanks. I talked to Shane Morris from the Humane Society. He's very, very thankful that she has joined the team. He needed the help, and he appreciates the city for putting her there. So, thank you.
Thanks.
And then last question, I have here that it's emergency language. Is that really needed?
Well, we do have some bills that have come in from supplies that we ordered. So if we could pay them sooner than later, it would be really nice.
I know.
I mean,
I've seen it as well. Thank you, Ms. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
All right, next is please prepare legislation to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the Economic Development Fund to the following account. $4,000 source of contract. This is needed to pay the city's annual Stark Economic Development Board Fund Drive commitment and to provide funds for the vacant lot program for the remainder of the year. Are there any questions or discussion this evening? Now we're on to transfers. We have summer concert series, moving $2,020 out of summer concert supplies, putting into service and contracts. And then we have one in the police, reducing their salary by $46,000, placing that into overtime. All right, that is all we have for finance. With that, I do have a request for a special comment from Mr. Snead.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. So the past 6 years, when I first started to run for city council, I always said I didn't want to do this. This is something I believe that was forced. Power should be forced upon someone to make change. okay? This position, I don't have to tell any of you, is about sacrifice. You've sacrificed your money, you've sacrificed time with family. Currently, we have a councilman out who sacrificed his health. I was there last November. And at this time, I don't feel that this is the direction that God wants me to pursue. So I've been discussing opportunities. I've received several job offers down south, and I've decided to accept one of them. So I will be moving my family. I will go fishing with my son. He wants to be, I said, do you want to be a football player when you grow up? Do you want to be a fisherman? He said, Eric, you'll appreciate this. He said he wants to own his own construction company one day. And he wants to be a fisherman. So those are my intentions. I'm going to take my son fishing. I'm going to spend time with my brother while we still can. And I appreciate each and every one of you for what you sacrifice and do. Same thing with the mayor's administration and the mayor. Thank you. This is not easy, but I believe it's God's will that I resign. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Sneed, but I'd rather call you Mike. You came into my print shop a number of years ago when you were first talking about this. And I sat and I talked with you, and I got the feeling you cared. You wanted the best for the citizens, and I got a good feeling. So I want to thank you for your time, your energy, and it hasn't been an easy few months, but I thank you profusely. And we're going to miss you. And I understand you have a pretty big house. So does that mean maybe once in a while we can knock on your door and like visit and go fishing with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarita.